Get started here. So I will welcome Austin. Austin, I did get your email. I haven't quite read it all, but I will do it. Okay. I promise.
Thank you.
Jordan is not going to be with us today, or do you know for a fact?
He can't make the meetings actually anymore.
Oh, not anymore?
Yeah.
So you guys need it. Then you need another rep.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're
good.
get that.
All right, good. So we'll make a note of that. John's here, Dave's here, Julie's here, AC and Mary Ellen will get here, I guess, when they can. Or Mary Aaron, I should say. So we'll just go forward if that's okay with you, Julie. Jeff is here for Carol.
Right, that's what I said.
Ann is here for CSEA. And is Cha here as an alternate?
Yeah.
There's Cha. Hello, Cha. How are you? And Cha is here for Gary. And we are ready to go.
I'm blending in.
Like a ninja.
So that's call to order and introductions. Anybody else want to do any further introductions? I see Maggie down there and I see Joe down there, so welcome. Approval of the minutes, November 21st, 2013 and October 24th, 2013. I'll entertain a motion if anybody cares to do so. We can take them one at a time or both at the same time, whatever your pleasure is.
I move to approve the minutes for both meetings.
Okay, move John. Need a second from someone?
I second.
Thank you, Dave. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Jeff's going to abstain? Okay. Very good. Thank you, folks. Public comment. Anyone from the public, which is 3 people? Don't see anything? Okay, then we'll move on. The first item is the adopted CERP agreement. And let's do this. So basically, what I wanted to report, this is a memo that everybody has seen. It has went out to all of our, I think it went out district-wide to all of our employees. We had a total of 19 people thus far take advantage of the CERP. When I say thus far, it is closed. However, we are still in negotiations with the Faculty Association, so it is possible that further people will take advantage of that as those negotiations continue and go forward. We'll see how all that works. Did anybody have any questions or comments regarding the topic of the CERP in general that anybody would like to share or talk about?
I would like to add, you said it's closed for classified and managers. If the faculty happen to come to some agreement, would it open again for second thinkers on the classified side?
I don't want to say yes. I don't want to say no.
Yeah, I figure.
But I would say that that we had a deadline. It was important to achieve that deadline from the perspective working with the PARS group, which is the Public Agency Retirement System. But one never knows.
I'd like you to say no so that I can just close the book on my mind and that's it.
Well, now that you say that, John.
Right, now it's open.
Now it's
Okay,
open.
okay.
No. So yeah. So the answer is it's a guarded no. How's that? There's always discretion on the part of the Dr. Roach, actually superintendent president, to reopen it if there was some reason to do that for based upon some individual's need or some district need. Okay.
One other comment,
Yes,
just
sir.
a concern, because I'm immersed in Banner and Lancer Point. I'm sure we're going to be losing a huge knowledge base, and there are pivotal people. So we need to be thinking about, I know this is more of a Lancer Point issue, but who's going to step in after they
Yeah,
after they
and this
go.
is one of the reasons why the deadline was what the deadline was. So we have time, the college has time to identify where the gaps are going to be and what we need to backfill some of those gaps. We do have some We have 4 managers and 15 classified, many of which hold important and critical jobs. And so that workload has to be either redistributed.
Oh, great.
It has to be, I said either redistributed, filled in the capacity in which it emptied, if you will, and or other opportunities, other positions that are created that can meld and shape and work. The purpose of the SERP is not just to save money, but it's also to provide an organization the opportunity to rethink the way certain business practices are enacted, what business processes might be enacted in order to improve on something we're doing. It also helps a great deal with diversity issues and hiring of a more diverse staff. It also provides an opportunity to bring in people of all ages with different perspectives and different viewpoints on how to get A through Z done, because they bring with them a wealth of other experiences that then can do it. So I like to say that a SERP is not really about the money, it's about the other things. The money is there, but very often over a period of years, that money is spent on other things and reallocated. SERPs cost the district money, obviously, and I think, Joe, is it about 1.3 million a year now that we're paying for in the last SERPs over a 5-year period? Is that what it was? Or?
I don't remember, but I don't think it was that high.
So it might be a little more like $1 million or something.
Or even lower, yeah. I'm not sure. I'll have to
Yeah.
look.
I
Does
don't-
that include the savings for the SERP?
No, that doesn't include the
Okay.
savings. That's what the SERP
So I
costs.
think it's disingenuous to say that SERPs cost the college money, because by law, a SERP can't cost the college money or you can't offer it.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be clear, I didn't mean to be
Alright.
disingenuous. What I meant
Okay.
to say is that there is a cost of offering the SERP.
Okay.
That cost is less expensive than the savings associated with the SERP.
Okay.
That's true.
Unless what you do is that you immediately backfill all of your positions, and then you are funding all the positions, plus you've got the expense of the SERP. So it depends on how you look at it. But yeah, that's correct. I did not mean to mislead. Yes, sir.
Bob, regarding faculty, sir, in the past, during contract negotiations, sometimes both sides are able to designate certain areas where they both agree, and they issue an MOU saying, okay, on this point we'll agree and we'll get this in place right now, and then we'll just continue on negotiating the other issues. Is that possible for SERP for faculty for this year?
I don't want to speak to the negotiations, but I would say this: the district is open to all discussions right now. So, you know, if that's what it comes back to the table, then it's certainly something that the district would consider. Okay, so moving on then. The next item. So we wanted to speak a little bit about the underfunded nature of our workers' comp self-insurance fund, and the way that this works in general. And Joe, jump in here and help me out if I'm going askew on this. But the way that this works is we work with our workers' comp provider to, not necessarily from an actuarial point of view, but from a historical point of view, to basically project the amount of workers' comp claims that we might be on the hook to pay over an extended period of time.
Correct.
Okay, so the bottom line is, in any given year, X number of individuals will claim a workers' comp claim. It might be 5, it might be 10, it might be 20, it would be whatever. The history of workers' comp claims is sometimes they'll close in a short period of time, many times they're open for years. 10, 15, 20 years. Cha, who does a great deal of work with us, our workers' comp group, can tell you that she's been dealing with claims for many years, and we've settled one that is 30 years, I think, almost 30 years. You know, they go on forever. So from an actuarial point of view, there is a projection of what the costs are long-term for what it is that you, the district, might be culpable for, have to pay for over a period of years. We have a workers' compensation self-insurance fund that we fund more or less on an annual basis. We pay out in the neighborhood of $700,000, $800,000 a year to $1 million in claims, $700,000 to $1 million in claims annually. We do that from a self-funding point of view. But for the last several years, our auditors and others have been pointing out that from an actuarial point of view, you really should have a fund that is funded to at least $3 million, give or take, as I recall the numbers.
Right.
Joe's nodding affirmatively. That fund has got about $280,000 in it last time I looked, or maybe it's less than, it was less. It might have been, at one point it was 30-something thousand. At the end of last year, we usually have about 200,000 in it. So the bottom line is, from an audit point of view and from a good business practice point of view, we're going to have to start contributing in a much more significant way starting in 14-15 to our workers' compensation fund. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of advising the Budget and Resource Allocation Committee that as we build the 14 budget, we're going to have to set aside a significant sum of money to fund that self-insurance fund. Joe, did I say it
That's right.
pretty much correctly? So that's just FYI. We're not exactly sure what the number will be, but it will be substantial.
You did give us a copy of the budget at a previous meeting, right? That's what I was thinking, a draft budget or something.
For
14?
14-15?
Oh, no, we
Oh,
did the
thir-
outline of what we're gonna send out to everybody so they can do their budget request. That didn't include these.
Yeah, but I'm going to give you some budget numbers for 14-15
Okay,
here
that's
before
what I
our
was
meeting is
trying to
over.
find, but
Yeah,
okay,
but I'm going
all
to
right.
give you, because we just got the information last Friday, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Hey, Danny, how are you,
Hey,
sir?
sorry I'm late.
That's okay. So I think that's really what I wanted to say, is that it's dramatically underfunded. It's been that way for the last 3 or more years. We kept it low in particular as a way of helping to deal with the financial challenges that we had over the past several years, and now we just can't not. That's a double negative. We cannot continue to not fund it. Cannot continue to fund it
We can't
inappropriately.
continue to not fund it.
We're with you.
You got it.
They've fallen.
We deal with students all the time.
Okay,
So.
that's right. Okay, anything else on that issue? We're on 4B, Danny, just to get you up to speed there. Okay, so along the same lines, we have something called OPEB, which is the Other Post-Employment Benefit. And what that is for those district employees who've had at least 14 years of service with the district, who retire and go past the age of 65, they get an annual payment for the rest of their lives of, I want to say, $1,440. Is that the right number?
1440, yes.
$1,440 annually. So that's an other post-employment benefit.
That's towards
That's
medical?
yeah, they can use it any way they want, but usually people use it for a supplemental to Medicare or whatever they might use.
We've called it the Medicare wraparound also.
Medicare
That's what it
wraparound,
is.
okay? And that's our OPEB requirement. Now, in order to have the funds that we need in order to fund that particular benefit, we do an actuarial study every 2 years, which tells us what that liability is. We've been very good with our OPEB fund in recent years. We are among. Let's put it this way: there are more districts that have not funded their OPEB responsibilities than there are districts that have. We are on the positive side of that equation. We have done so. We have something on the order of just under $16 million of obligations, and that's what we had as of 2 years ago, and we have maintained that amount in our OPEB fund.
Is that
Fund
yearly?
64. No, it's what the total amount is that we have to have. And as of 2 years ago, the last time we did the actuarial study, we had to have roughly $16 million in that fund. The district has been able to do that.
What do
Um,
we expend yearly out of there?
We expend, we contribute, the answer is we expend, I think that's where the 1.3 million comes in my mind, 1.2, 1.3 million a year. So you have to fund it two ways. You have to fund it to make the annual payments to all of our post-65-year-old employees and make the $1,440, and that costs us $1.1 million, $1.2 million, as I recall, annually. 1.5?
I think that part of it was, I think, 650,000. But then there's the other part that
Okay.
brings it up to 1.2 that you're gonna talk about.
So we have that annual contribution, which I thought was more in the $1 million range, but it sounds like it might be a little bit less than that. Right? But in any event, we have the annual contribution that funds the ongoing annual obligation. And then we have the a secondary fund that maintains us, that keeps us whole in terms of what the overall fund needs to be funded, again, actuarially, so that we have what we need to pay everybody going forward. By law, we have to have that study done every 2 years to kind of see where we are. With the number of employees that have left us due to the supplemental early retirement plan or through other types of retirements, we have ongoing obligations. Now, what I'm saying to you is that we're going to do another study this year that will likely result in us having to increase from 16 million to some additional sum, higher sum, because of the number of retirements and the number of others that have left the district through retirement or through retirements. And we're actually commissioning that survey or that study actually this month.
It went to the board approved it on the contract log last week.
Right.
We're sending the agreement to the company, so it's been about 2 years.
Right.
And this information that we get from this actuary will inform how we budget for the 14-15
Right.
budget.
Now, the one last thing I want to say on this topic by way of explanation. There are two ways in which you're supposed to fund your OPEB. Actually, there's one way, well, there's two options for funding your OPEB. One is through a irrevocable trust, which means that you put the money away and it cannot be used for any other purpose other than that obligation. The other is you put it into a fund. We call it Fund 64. It's not irrevocable. Our Board of Governors, i.e. the Board of Trustees, has the ability to move that funding where it might need to for any given reason. For example, during the last couple of years where we've had cash flow issues, where because the state was not paying us because of deferrals and what have you, in order on, I think only 2 occasions, actually might have only been 1, but 2 maximum, we borrowed $5 million from Fund 64 in order to make a payroll that particular month. We had the ability to do that because the money was not in an irrevocable trust. Okay? Some of you who've been around for a while might recall back around 2006 or so when the Board of Trustees established this by law had to come to grips with the OPEB obligation. The board, after great debate, determined that self-rule was really the way they wanted to go, and they did not want to have their hands, if you will, handcuffed into being able to use that money should a district emergency require them to do so. So they determined not to put it in an irrevocable trust. The topic every once in a while comes back up. We still have board members who strongly believe that that money should not be put in an irrevocable trust. We have a new board member, he may have a different viewpoint on that going forward, but for now, the money is not in an irrevocable trust. So we're going to, from a budgeting point of view, we have an obligation to fund it, and we will, and then we have an ongoing annual obligation to pay it. So that's sort of a kind of a primer as to where we are with that, and a preview that as we build the 14-15 budget, once we get this actuarial study back, it might be another significant dollar item that we have to deal with going forward.
But if other colleges aren't dealing with it commensurate to us, then maybe we are over-complying. And maybe the people who are doing our actuarial studies.
I'm sorry, say that again?
why are other colleges not funding it to the level we are?
Ross Selvage, how are you? Let me introduce Ross Selvage, who is our new Area 1 trustee. Welcome,
okay.
welcome, welcome. Let's go around the table real quick and do a quick
I
introduction
didn't
so you
want
know
to
who's
interrupt,
here.
I'm just a spectator.
Okay, all right, very good. We're actually talking about the OPEB obligation right now, the other post-employment benefit obligation, and how that works. So, to answer your question, at the time that the board made the determination to do what they did, they determined that they were going to be as compliant with the obligation as they possibly could. They did not want it to be a district such as the LA Community College District that is literally well over 100 million in non-compliance, and they did not want the day to come, which I understand could be coming in the next few years, where there would be a legal obligation to fund it in its totality. What the legislation has said up to this point is all of the employers have the OPEB obligations that they have to fund. They have said, we are going to give you a period of time under self-rule, if you will, to comply, to make certain that your retirees are taken care of. If at some future date, and that date may be coming sooner than later now that the economic situation for the state has improved to such a degree that people could bring that topic up again, if it's determined that not enough of the special districts and school districts and community college districts and the special districts have done what they needed to do from a self-governance perspective, then there very well may be legislation that comes down and requires it. Our board decided a few years ago they didn't want to be that kind of place. They wanted to fund it as they needed, fund it as it goes. They just did not want to handcuff themselves with the requirement of having to put something in an irrevocable trust so that they couldn't get their hands on it if there was ever an emergency.
Okay, thank you.
And fully funding means that if everybody that were 55 and over,
65, what did you
well,
say?
50,
65.
well, this
Yeah.
also includes
Right.
benefits. If you retire at 55, you get your full benefits paid till 65.
Okay.
But that's not
The same-
OPEB, though. That's not OPEB.
Oh, that's what.
That's not in here? I thought it was.
The other post-employment benefit is it is in there. It does pay for the medical. It is guaranteed
That
the
might be the
medical is
other
paid for.
650 you're talking
So
about.
That's
it's-
the 1.2.
That's
Yeah.
right, and that's
That's how you
the
get to
1.2.
That's the the insurance,
Yeah.
I believe, is the 1.2.
Yeah, so Danny brings up a good point here. To clarify, there's two expenses. If I retired at the age of 58, the benefit is that I get my full district benefits package, medical package, until age 65. And then at age 65 and further, I would get the $1440 per year for life after that. So the OPEB benefit funds both. So that's where the actuarial study comes in to try to determine, based upon people's ages, years of service, all that kind of stuff.
But fully funding means that if everybody that were qualified did it all at the same time, they could
Yes.
handle it. That's
Yeah,
what it
fully
means.
funded means, in this case, the actuary 2 years ago determined that 16 million, give or take, was fully funded. Now, as they do the study again, as we're obligated to do, that number could go up to 17 million, it could go down to 15.5, it could do whatever it's going to do. It's likely going to go up to some degree because we've had more people retire in the last couple of years, but we'll have to wait and see.
I'm just trying to point out that fully funding it means something that is highly unlikely to happen, and that is everybody that's 55 and over retires all at the same time. That's all.
Yeah, and that may be, but the board's made a decision to do what it does, so we go from there. Okay, anything else on the OPEB, as I have tried to get that out there on the table? You have a package for? Oh, good, thank you. All right, so now we get into the governor's proposed budget. And I have two documents here that I want to distribute. And I want to say that this information is fresh as defined as an interpretation by Dan Troy, who is the Vice Chancellor for College Finance and Facilities Planning, the California Community College System, as to the governor's proposed 14-15 budget and its specific impact on community colleges. I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to give you a one-page handout that we prepared that speaks to the impact on PCC. I want to make sure, though, that just as a prelude to this, that everybody understands that this is the governor's proposed budget. That's the first round of the budget development process. His budget now is considered by the legislature. It's considered by the entities that are impacted by the budget. There are many lobbyists and others who get into the mix, into the discussion. And between now and what they call the May revise, which usually comes out about mid-May, there's a lot of negotiations. When the May revise comes out in mid-May, that usually is like 95+% of where the budget is going to be for the California community colleges. And then there's a little bit of wrangling between, for the last 30 days, give or take, and then we have a budget. So what this is, and I think what I might do is I might do these side by side because I think that might be helpful for everybody to maybe do it that way. Might be a little clearer too. So what I did is I took the information from Dan Troy. In addition to that, I took the information from Dan Troy and I then computed what it meant to PCC in terms of dollars at the moment. Last Friday, Joe and I were at a Chancellor's Office and Association of Chief Business Officers meeting where there was a workshop on the budget. And I have several pages of notes from the 4 presenters. One was a gentleman or woman from the Department of Finance, a deputy director. Then there was an individual from the Legislative Analyst's Office, and then Dan Troy, and then there was someone from the Community College League of California. So I have those notes. And I'll talk about that in a minute here. So, first of all, they start by talking about how things are a little bit better in general, and how there was a healthy, there's more resources than was anticipated at this point. So that's what kind of the first 2 paragraphs speak to. However, it also speaks to the fact that the tax system continues to be heavily reliant on capital gains, and as an example of that, last year the state collected $10 billion in capital gains, and a few years ago they only collected $3 billion. So the state continues to be very reliant on capital gains funding that it gets from individuals and corporations and what have you when the economy is going well. But when the economy is not going well, there is a dramatic reduction in tax receipts. And what that means is that if you only budget for when times are good and you don't consider what will happen when times are bad, i.e. rainy day funds and such, then when times are bad, you have a serious problem, which is what the state just went through. So what the governor is saying here, and all the other stuff that we won't take the time to talk about now, but what he's basically saying is, yeah, happy days are here again, that's a good thing, but if we don't plan for the next recession, we're in trouble. Recessions usually are in 10-year cycles, give or take. Theoretically, although I don't necessarily believe this, but theoretically we are 4 to 5 years into an economic recovery right now. Supposedly that's what some of the economists are saying. So if you believe that, then we could be at another significant recession on 4 or 5 years from now. So what the governor is saying is that the state has to prepare for that, and every local entity that is responsible for running its operations needs to develop these funds as well. Okay, so the first thing they talk about is Prop 98 and the impact of Prop 98 and what the additional funds have resulted in. But now let's get into the specifics of California Community Colleges. The chief budget highlights as they pertain to CCC's, California Community Colleges, are access. The system is going to provide $155.2 million in access. Generally speaking, the Pasadena Area Community College District collects about 1.9% of everything the system gets. The hook this year, though, what's different this year is that they're going to be providing that access money to colleges that identify themselves of having the greatest unmet need in adequately serving their community colleges' higher educational needs. Now, of course, the question is, what does that mean? So there is a committee of people representing the CEOs, the chief business officers, chief instructional officers, a variety of other stakeholders in trying to define what that means. In plainer English, what it likely means is completion. Programs that result in students transferring, students receiving AA or AS degrees, students receiving certificates, and doing so in a timely fashion. Timely might be defined as 3 years. You know, back in the day, we came through community colleges and we got out in 2 years.
Is TAG considered completion? Like if you don't get
Transfer
a degree
lines
here?
down? Yes,
yeah,
transfer.
but you
Yes.
have a
Yes.
pathway?
Yes.
And can I ask another question?
Sure.
70,000, is this full-time equivalent?
This will allow colleges to add approximately 70,000 head count.
Full-time though?
Yes.
That's not a seat?
No, it's not a seat.
Okay.
Yeah, 70,000 additional bodies is what they're looking at here. So they're still trying to define that, and we're all, as a system, we're working through the definition of that. But it's there. So presumably, we can fulfill whatever those guidelines are going to be, because we are a community college that is focused on transfer and degrees and certificates, and we're becoming more so doing that. Yeah.
Do you know the name of that committee, Bob?
You know, Dan Troy, he didn't give it a name, did he, Joe?
No.
He just talked about this group coming together.
Right.
There was a little piece on NPR this morning that I kind of half heard on my way out the door.
Yeah.
He was talking about
Yeah.
this.
This is so fresh.
Uh-huh.
I mean, every district's got significant concern about exactly what that means. Significant
It was
concern.
interesting. I didn't
right?
really hear the whole thing.
And there's a hook tied to the next two funding categories. So in any event, let me just say that the COLA, which is 0.86%, which is the next line, the next bullet says, COLA $48.5 million to fund a statutory COLA of 0.86%. So since we're basically 1.9% of that number, that's about $875,000. So it's important to know that the COLA, the cost of living allowance, is a relatively small 0.86%. In one of these handouts, there's a dartboard that's attached, which we'll get to later, that shows that the COLAs are predicted for the next several years, and they're not dramatically high, but that's what they're predicting. We'll get to that in a second. So we get $875,000, and then we get the access money, assuming we're successful. So that gives us an additional $3,375,000, which is the first bullet, the first bolded statement down below, which is possible 15 additional general unrestricted revenue. Unrestricted is O1 funds. It means the district can spend those money any ways that it sees correct. So if we were to collect all of the COLA and all the access money, we would be increasing our base revenue, our general revenue by $3.4 million, give or take, according to the governor's budget. This is going to change, but this is kind of where we are right now. Now, as far as what the asterisk indicates, again on the next bullet on below, we have one time, at least what we think is one time right now from what we're told thus far, 2014-15 additional restricted revenue. Now in our world, restricted is the O3 funds. And what the governor is proposing is an additional $100 million in what they call student success. Those of us who've been around for a while know that as matriculation dollars, matric dollars. And what they're saying is that that will be categorical and restricted, very likely to programs that can be proven to support transfers, degrees, certificates, getting students through efficiently, effectively, and get those goals. And so they're going to, the governor's saying, I'm going to give the system an extra $100 million for student success. Some of you might recall matriculation, as I mentioned, it's now called Student Support System Program, or Student Success System Program, SS.
3 S's.
3 S's, SSSP is the new name for matric. So they're going to throw another $100 million in the pot, assuming we can, we'd be successful in applying for that money, which I think we would. We could get another 1.9 million. Then they have a new pot of money called student equity plans, and these are sort of, from what I understand thus far, it's educational plans. Okay, our new degree works program in Banner will help us to develop student equity plans, which are basically education plans and programs by which to help students to complete maybe mentors, maybe additional counselors, maybe additional resources that will help students achieve that which is stated in their student equity plans. All right, so that's another 1.9 million that I'm assuming that we would qualify for. Then there's deferred maintenance. As many of you know, the district has, as all districts have suffered from a lack of deferred maintenance money for many, many, many years. Governor's proposing putting 87.5 into the system, and then out of that, our share would be 1.65 million. Again, it's categorical, again, it's restricted, but there's another thing to this. It's got a one-time match 1-to-1. So if we want $1.65 million, we've got to budget $1.65 million in order to get that full amount. If we don't want all 1.65 because we can't afford it, then whatever it is, they'll match up to 1.65 million, but we've got to budget that amount. The same thing with instructional equipment. For those of you who are needy of instructional equipment, of which many of our programs are, we've not seen instructional equipment money for many, many, many years. The state's saying, governor's saying that he'll put another 87.5 into the pot this year. To give you a kind of a quick comparison, we hadn't seen instructional equipment money for many years. This year, $280,000, right, from the state.
280.
280. Then we had a little bit of ourselves. We had about 400 to spend,
Right.
but about 280 from this, 287 actually to be exact. The governor is saying that we're going to throw so much more into that pot. PCC's share, that same 1.9%, could be worth as much as $1.65 million. So it's a dramatic increase, huge increase. Now, in this case, it's a 1-to-3 match. So we'd only have to come up with 550,000 or whatever the number is in order to get the 1.65 million in instructional equipment money. Through Joe's good work and Dr. Bell's and some of the deans, they've already been contacted. There's a list together, and the preliminary list is like 1.85 million, I think.
1.5.
1.5. I think I saw, 1.5 million. But that's just the first brush. There's more needs than that. Yes, Drew?
That's kind of shocking, because as a faculty member who goes to all my division meetings, I've never been asked what my instructional needs are, and I would think that the faculty would be the ones who would be asked what the instructional needs are.
Yeah, I can't comment on that. I know this. I do know this. Dr. Bell and others have asked the deans to do this. Joe, you can speak to this. You've sent many emails out. You've got responses from...
The feedback I got was from deans, and my understanding was that they were going out and asking what was needed.
Yeah, so maybe if it didn't happen in your area.
And,
That's
but
a
like
pretty
Bob
big
said,
area.
I know, social science is pretty big, pretty big.
Okay.
But it was the first brush, and we
Yeah.
know that this is probably not capturing the majority of what's needed.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So in any event, and I think we're looking at 3 million plus when the dust settles.
yeah, I
But-
think they were surprised when it was just 1.5.
Okay, so there could be up to an additional 1.65 million. Now we get to the deferral money. Now this is really important to recall, to remember. When you, and I'm not going to take the time, and you guys have heard enough of me, but this is actually a very good document that Dan did, and I tweaked a little bit, that sort of defines in a pretty good way what these things mean. And on deferrals, he says 235.6 million in budget year funding. So in this current, well, in 14-15 budget year funding to pay down the deferrals, combined with 356.8 million proposed in one-time funds for this purpose, this would completely eliminate the system's intra-year deferrals. So dating back to 2007, 2008, when the budget issues happened, community college districts were the monies owed to them by the state to run their districts. Every year there were certain amounts that were deferred, and some of those amounts were deferred beyond the budget year in which they were in. They were deferred into the next budget year. And to make a long story endless here, as we come to 2014-15, the Pasadena Area Community College District is owed precisely $11,908,981. Okay? The governor is proposing that we will get that amount of cash next year. Now, what's important to remember about that is that the deferrals are one-time cash. The cash does not balance the 13-14 budget if RDA funds are not provided, and I'll come back to that in a second. What it is money that is owed to the district, but it doesn't balance the 13-14 budget. But it is cash comes to the district. One-time cash, money that's owed it. What this committee will talk about, what the administration will talk about and recommend to the Board of Trustees is what happens to that cash. What do we do with that cash? Do we spend it on instructional equipment? Do we put part of it in a rainy day fund? Do we fund the workers' comp and the underfunded workers' comp self-insurance fund? Do we contribute to OPEB if we feel we need to do that? This is basically one-time cash that we can do something with, but it's not. It doesn't balance our 13-14 budget. Yes.
It's
Mary?
not restricted.
It is not restricted.
So it's money that
general
was
fund money.
included in prior year's budgets, and it was not paid to the district.
That's right. So it's now, it's the final,
And it's
and if the
unrestricted.
governor has his way, it will make the system whole. And if I remember correctly, it was a total of like $591 million owed system-wide. And actually, if you add up, I guess 356 and 235, you get close to that number. 592.4. And now this will pay it out, and the individual districts can do with it what they feel is appropriate. Yes, Dan?
But can I just add to that?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just want to enforce that this is a one-time
Yeah.
dollar amount. It's not
It's not
something
added
we
to
will
the
get
base,
every
it
year.
doesn't roll over, it's just cash. And the idea behind it is that so many districts were forced to borrow money. The tax and revenue anticipation notes, the so-called trans, and it made their operations incredibly difficult because they couldn't make payroll. They were constantly forced to borrow money. So this amount of money supposedly goes back to provide fiscal stability, cash flow fiscal stability, not accrual budgeting, but cash flow stability, so that you no longer have to pay. And I'm going to talk about the RDA things in a second here. I'll go to Dan first, though.
All right. One of the things we've heard is that one of the reasons that we have to keep a large reserve fund is to cover these deferral payments, where we have to keep the school going from month to month, and with the state is not sending us the money that we're owed, so we have to have that rainy day fund to pay to keep the school going. If all these deferrals are paid off, does that mean we could reduce the reserve fund?
Well, I don't want to speak for the administration at this point because we're still talking. I certainly can't speak for the board, but I will say this. By law, we are required to maintain a reserve of 5% of 5% of whatever our general fund is.
All right.
So whatever that number is. By practice, our Board of Trustees for at least the going on 10 years I've been here, and I think for a long time before that, always said 12 million is the number that we want to have in our reserve. And then in recent years, we've maintained another, what I would call operating contingency, of 5 or 6 million. So God forbid if the earthquake comes or something happens and we need more operating cash, we've got that. So in the last 3 years that I've been pretty much involved with the budget, we've maintained between 18 and 20 million, 21 million at the on the bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what happens as we go forward with this money is for the board and others to consider as we go forward here based upon what we recommend. But certainly we have, we can certainly weigh in with whatever it is that we think is what we'd like to weigh in with.
Okay, and one more question. What's the status of our tram right now?
It's paid off.
Okay.
It's all completely paid off. We did a tran, 1 year tran, first one I think I won't say ever done, but certainly done in 15 or more years. As it turned out, because we had the ability to do interfund borrowing, we didn't need it. That was cheap money, though. I think it ended up costing us just under or just over $100,000 to have that $10 million available to us, because we didn't know what was going to happen. But when we did come up short 1 month of about $5 million, we took it out of Fund 64 OPEB, and we just paid it back to the county, and we're good to go.
Bob, excuse me.
Yep. Mhm.
In the event that it's not likely, but it's frugally spent and there's a balance, can it roll over to the next fiscal year?
Ask your question again, sorry.
In the event that it's not all used up and there's a balance, can it be rolled over to the
Yeah,
next?
absolutely.
fiscal year?
Yeah,
It can, okay.
in fact, all the money that's at the end of every budget,
Mhm.
there, God willing, is money that was unspent. Depending on the year, that money has been as low as maybe 5 or 6 or 7 million to as high as 13 million, give or take. Some of us remember the infamous Fund 41 days when all the money was dumped into Fund 41. Remember that, Dan?
I do.
Okay. And when Dr. Rocha arrived and a couple of others, we became much more transparent. So now Fund 41 is divided very clearly between equipment and facilities, I should say, and then equipment. Technology and facilities. And the balance in there is much lower. So whatever excess funds we have is in that reserve fund. It's not a pot of money that is dipped into for various and sundry reasons, which may or may not have happened in the past. I can't tell you. I can just tell you what's happening now. But yes, at the end of every fiscal year, whatever is left is rolled over to the following year, maybe distributed into the different funds that we have, like OPEB, like workers' comp insurance, like whatever we've got.
I was just wondering if this particular one applied as well. Okay.
Yeah, it's not, if it was a grant
Mhm.
Yeah.
and you had obligations and you didn't spend because you weren't able to get things done quickly enough, then more than likely you have to return those dollars. But this is not a grant. These are not grant dollars.
Okay, so going to number 8 on this, and then I want to talk about number 9. 8 is the Prop 39 energy efficiency dollars. Those of you might recall, I think it was last year's ballot or the year before, Prop 39 for energy efficiency was passed by the voters. PCC's share this year is approximately $877,000, and we're in the final throes of the paperwork necessary, working with the Pasadena Water and Power Department to get our hands on matching funds from PWP in order to take advantage of this. One's going to be for an energy management system, or what they call an EMS, and the other one is for cooling tower replacements. And so what the governor's proposing is that he will fund it again next year to the tune of $39 million, and assuming we jump through the right hoops, we could get our hands on $741,000. Now, this is the one that could cause us a little bit of indigestion. The redevelopment agencies, as some of you remember from last year, the governor sunsetted, the legislature and the governor, and was that a proposition? What sunsetted the RDAs? I forget now. Was it a proposition, or was it the governor or the legislature?
Legislature.
It was legislature. Sunsetted the redevelopment agencies about 2, maybe 3 years ago. Signed, and the governor signed off on it. And so what that basically said is that all the money that was going to the cities for development now would go back to the state to fund other obligations that the state had, including K through 14, K-12 plus community colleges, grades 13, 14. Unfortunately, the collections tied to that, or the payments tied to that, have been much less than people predicted that they would be, because of cities being very cautious about what they turn back to the state. And basically, whether it's through legal action, lawsuits, or whether it's just ongoing work with the Department of Finance saying, this money is already obligated, this money, this money is not part of what you think it is, and there's lots of arguments and discussion over what goes back to whom. It's been further complicated that every one of the counties in the state, it seems like, and there's over 100 counties in the state, I forget the number, it's a large number, they do their calculations and everything differently, so it's very difficult for the Department of Finance to figure out exactly what the baseline is and how to compute it. So it's a real mess. Now what that's resulted in is that the money that the state presumed was going to be available for K through 14 has not materialized anywhere near the amount that was needed, and therefore there's large chunks of money owed districts. Or owed the state, and because it's now part of a complicated Prop 30 formula, which we'll talk about briefly in a second. In 13-14, our budget was built upon the notion, because at the time that we built it, we had a pretty strong sense that they told us that that was going to happen, that we were going to get $3.5 million, give or take. As it turns out, to date, we've only collected $700,000 of that 3.5. And we don't know, as of January 21st or 22nd, whatever today's date is, whether or not we're going to get the balance, the $2.8 million or not, this year. We're going to get it eventually. We just don't know if we're going to get it this year or not. Since we built it in as a piece of our budget, the budget that has a healthy reserve, I might add, we will potentially come up $2.8 million short this year on the 13-14 budget. Now, how do we fill that 2.8? We could use some of the 11.9. We could choose not to fill it at all, which we wouldn't because the budget would basically come up short. But next year, if we wanted to build the base back up, we could use some of the 11.9 for 14-15. But what I want to point out to BRAC today is that, at least as of today, we're not sure if we're going to see more than the $700,000 of the 3.5 that was budgeted. Okay, that at the time we put the budget together was a reasonable expectation. And that's just another example of the instability of the whole RDA dissolution process, redevelopment agency dissolution process. And I happen to sit, because I'm the district's representative, I sit on the successor agencies of 5 different communities in our district that have redevelopment agencies, and I can tell you from sitting on those at those meetings, every one of them is arguing with the Department of Finance in one form or another. Arcadia is probably having the least amount of problem. Pasadena's got big problems, and several others, but it is what it is. So that's our $2.8 million challenge at the moment. And the last thing is this thing called apportionment stabilization, and if you read that bullet, which is sort of towards the bottom part of page 2, it's very, very confusing as to what it means. So Marie has been talking with the Chancellor's office, and at the end of the day, based upon some complex calculations of individual district apportionment, there is some stabilization dollars that will be, if the governor has his way, that will be made available to all the community colleges to bring them in some form or fashion back to stabilization vis-a-vis what their base was going back to 2007, 2008, to contribute to that more stable time, if you will. The problem is no one knows if that's going to be $1, and I'll just put an outside number, but it doesn't mean anything, or $1 million to the Pasadena Area Community College District. It could be 0, it could be any number above that. So at the moment, I don't plug in any kind of figure because I don't have any idea what that number could be or would be. It could be 0, it could be this. But even if so whatever it might be, there's a stabilization factor to trying to bring us all back to where we were before the financial crisis hit. That's kind of the goal. The first goal that the governor has is bring everybody back to where they were and begin to try to fund them and provide second goal, provide additional money that focuses on completion, student success, diversity, getting people done. And the third goal is to grow the system towards that area. Yes, Julie?
if it were $100 per FTES, what would that mean for our college?
Well, receive at least 100 per, so our credit FTS is just under 21,000. So it'd be whatever that math is, 2 million, I guess, whatever that math is. Yeah, so that's, yeah, but it's also, it's not just on a 1-year basis, so it could be over a multiple year basis as they try to get us back to where they were. It's, yeah,
It's unclear right now.
it's very unclear. As a lot of this has been the last 5 years, right? It's just been very unclear. But we do our best. Yes, Dan?
Okay, is this the one where we have like a 2-year limit to try to build our?
No, that's
different.
that,
Okay, all right.
yeah. Without getting into a long story, there our FTES our base was reduced in 2009-10 and again in 2011-12. The state has since built back our 9-10. It was only like I think 500, 600, 700 FTS. We've since been built back to that. Now the state is trying to build back the 11-12 base. For us, it was just under 1,800. It was 1,700 and something FTS. And just a reminder, each FTS is worth $4,600, roughly per FTS. So it's a big number. In our case, our base was like 1,780 is a number that's sticking in my head, something like that. What they said last year, actually last May, right? Last June when we were finishing 13-14 budget, the plan at that point was to make the districts whole 18% per year times about, which is roughly 5 years, and you'd have the opportunity to make back 11, 12, 18% per year over those 5 years to get your 11, 12, our 1,700 back. So part of our goal this year, as we have an FTS goal for the total year, includes 410, 420 FTS, or whatever that number was, in order to get that back. Because they did say it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. Each year you're going to get a chance to get 18% back, but if you don't get your 18% back, it's gone to you forever, and we're going to distribute that to districts that are growing, are able to use that base.
Okay, given that, and given the popularity of winter intercession, is the administration considering any possibility of reinstating winter intercession to help build up our FTES?
I don't want to speak for the administration because I'm Bob Miller and I am what I am. It's a discussion of at the negotiating table, what have you. But what the administration is doing, what the faculty is doing, what everybody's doing, we are building a schedule, spring, summer, fall, whenever we offer courses, and we're maximizing that. We're now going to a block scheduling model to be able to accommodate students and get more students into the classes they need to be in, so they're not competing with themselves and trying to get in. And that way we can use our facilities and everything a little more efficiently. We are starting the weekend college in a significant way, so we're going to be basically going 7 days a week. And that, I guess, kicks off on February 8th. And then we've got a large online program that we're going to kick off, I think it's March 17th. So what we're doing is we are aggressively chasing every FTS we can find. However, the caveat to that, the absolute caveat to that, it's got to be efficient FTS. It doesn't do us any good to chase FTS that does not have our per section average up as high as we can get it to 31, 32 students, however we get there. Because if we launch a lot of classes that enroll 20 students, for example, then that same class that costs 20 the same class of 20 costs X, and if you could get it up to where it should be at 30 or 35, you get that many more students in there. But if we offer a bunch of 20 section students, because we don't close them because we don't close the low enrolled classes, then we're paying the same amount of money serving 20 students versus serving 30 students. So it's efficiency that's really important from an economic point of view.
Who decides what classes are mounted?
Well, the schedule is built by the enrollment management team in relation with the deans.
But is there
and
a
the faculty.
regression analysis? It seems like we could do an
There's a lot-
advanced
it's-
statistical regression and know what we need.
It's very data-driven now.
Okay.
And when I say now, I mean like just now.
Okay.
That we are now focusing on a data-driven model of enrollment management versus a distributed model of enrollment management,
Okay.
where every division got this and you can do anything you want with it. Now, it's driven by what students need for transfers, for degrees, for certificates, including what it takes to prepare students to get ready to be a transfer, to get ready to be to get a degree. So
But
that
is-
means that there's a certain amount of basic skills and remediation in there as well.
But is there a way to add, in industry they call it just in time. So like, if the class is filled, can we put
Yes.
in an,
And we're doing it right now, Julie. If
okay.
you went and you talked to
It's not
Doc,
happening in psychology and I need it to.
Then you-
So who do I talk to?
you should talk to Dr. Ariano, well, Dr. Price, first of all,
Okay.
and Dr. Ariano.
He's willing. He's willing.
I know, definitely. Because you look at our data, it's the same, this is an overstatement, but it's not much of an overstatement. It's the same 25 to 35 to 45 classes that students need to move on. And guess what? Psych is one of them, right?
And we
You
can't
know
get
that.
what we need.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've added a ton of additional sections. The faculty hiring fair that we had, which by the way, hats off to HR and to the deans and everybody else, we had well over 300 people at that fair last Saturday. But, we're looking for geographers and psychologists and social, the line was wrapped around the corner, I'm overstating a little bit, for the humanities and social sciences and English area. Because we need English, we need psych, we need soc, we need anthro, we need the basic math courses and the algebras and all that kind of stuff. So, and then we need languages. I'm looking at Mary Ellen and ESL because we need that to, if it's ESL, we need that to get the students to the level of being able to take these courses. So we need a certain number of that. And we need a certain amount of languages because that also fulfills transfer requirements. So it is about a balance. But then on top of that balance, it's about putting as many, from a pedagogical perspective, as many students as we possibly can into each class.
That is not a pedagogical perspective, you're giving the mathematical perspective.
agree.
The pedagogical perspective is there is a number at which, and the number for psychology is approximately 32,
Okay.
after which point their success and failure
Okay.
is,
Yep.
it's inversely proportional
Right.
to the number of students in the classroom.
What I was trying to say is I agree. There is a balance. There's a pedagogical balance and there's an economic balance, and that's nirvana. If we can get there, that's where we should be, because at the end of the day, it's about completion and persistence and retention and moving people on. It's
But
not about
arbitrarily choosing room size as the number of appropriate seats is not appropriate.
Okay, I hear you. Okay, good. So I got on that little tangent on the basis of the RDA monies and what's happening and budget and the need for efficiency. And also on the apportionment stabilization. We're going to get this money, but in order for us to grow the college we want it to grow it, and in order for us to buy the things that we need and provide the benefits we want to provide and everything else, we have to be as efficient as we can however we get there. And I guess that's my bottom line message there. So the last thing I want to point out on this one page is the note down below. And it says a significant portion of these funds will require a district match or matches, as well as aggressive and targeted enrollment management to meet specific degree transfer and certificate program completion requirements. Further additional marketing funds will likely be needed. So everything except that last sentence we just spent 10 minutes talking about. The last sentence really means that whether you're Glendale, Mount Sac, Citrus, Rio Hondo, East LA College, and whatever other college might be within 20 miles of us, we're all fighting for the same student right now. We're all competing for the same student. Everybody is in the growth mode. So you will see billboards, you will see buses, you will hear, anybody listen to KFI radio in the morning? You'll hear commercials. Because we are working hard. Now, we have some metrics that we're gonna try to use to try to determine if we're getting the return on that investment. And at the end of the day, the metric is, are we meeting our incredibly aggressive FDS goals or not? Because to the extent that we don't meet it this year, we have to borrow from next year in order to do that. And we want to reduce that amount of borrowing of FTES from one year to the next. Last year was the first year we actually did it in many, many years. So it's about aggressive, appropriate, professional marketing to get people here because everybody else is doing the same thing. Okay.
There's one thing on here that you didn't include, and I wanted to ask
Oh, I'm
about
sorry.
it.
Yeah.
The innovative models of higher education.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The reason why I didn't speak to it is because we don't know what that means yet.
Okay.
What it means is that they're going to provide $50 million, but it's not necessarily tied to the 1.9% formula. What it is it's, you know, when you think of the things, for example, one of the initiatives that we're working on, we have a first-year experience program pathway. Now, the faculty and other groups are beginning to talk about the second and third year pathways. That's innovation dollars. So just as we've been able to apply for Title V money and be successful, I can imagine that we'll be all over that $50 million once we know what the guidelines are for it. And I'm pretty sure it'll be successful because I'm very proud to say that this college has been a few years ahead of the curve. Student Success Task Force, our educational master plan was exactly what that turned out to be in many respects. So we're ahead of the curve a little bit, and so therefore we're very well positioned to apply for student success dollars and equity plan dollars and what might be these innovative models of higher education dollars. I didn't include it because it's not an automatic number, whereas the other stuff can be if we provide and follow the guidelines. Okay? So that's a lot of words, and I apologize. So that's kind of where we are right now, and I'll just end this part of it by saying, stay tuned. This is round one. We are, as a state, we are incredibly better off than we have been in years. One thing I will say, I got plenty of notes here from the meeting the other day, but the DOF is happy with the governor is happy with the DOF, Department of Finance. The LAO and the DOF and the governor's office are happy, but most importantly, the board of the chancellor of our system, Bryce Harris, the board of governors, is also in pretty strong agreement with where the governor's at right now, where the DOF is right now, and where the LAO is right now, which means there's not going to be a lot of fighting this year. Which means that pretty much what's on the with some massaging is probably going to happen in one way or another. So everybody's billing this as an extremely good budget year. Okay, benefits. Anything else on this topic? More to come in future meetings.
Yeah, well, we went,
Benefits committee update.
Okay, our benefits committee, met in, last week for the first time officially, under this new group. We had representatives, we invited representatives from each organization. Most of them showed up. We had a good table. We had a really good review from our broker on the ACA review, on just a brief overview of what the ACA is.
Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act, sorry.
Okay.
And some of the regulations, some of the impacts that organizations might be having, but specifically the impacts of the individuals, things that we're going to have to look out for, that kind of thing. We reviewed briefly our current study to make sure that we're going to be in compliance and identify any issues that that PCC and the district need to be paying attention to. And we basically met that we let everybody know that eventually it's going to be a quarterly, we're thinking of a quarterly meeting for right now because we're still getting our bearings and I'm trying to understand everybody's needs. We're going to meet on the third Thursday of each month until we let everybody know it's going to change back to quarterly. And so otherwise we asked the group to provide any topics and we'll move on from there.
Can you share with us, either you, Maggie, or Joe, what's happening with that audit and what Keenan is doing for us right now in terms of establishing baselines and the like for the Affordability Care Act?
Okay, so what the workforce study basically is looking at every single individual that the district has paid, that has employed over the last 2 years. Even if it's a student worker that worked 1 hour 2 years ago, they're going to be included in that. So we're looking at all wages paid, all people that were paid those wages, to see who actually would qualify, what the organizations, what the district's risk might be, and what we need to pay attention to as far as where we are in the spectrum of needing to change anything or certainly are offering the qualified benefits that the Affordable Care Act would require as minimum. Right now, of course, we do meet the minimum for our full-time people. Our question, though, that the study will help us answer, what about those who are not full-time? Do we meet the minimum requirements for those folks? It's a very large group of a bit of information that we're looking at. Every wage paid over the last 2 years, every person paid, their job changes, all of these things. So analyzing data that big requires obviously a very fine touch. So we've begun this process. We've sent in an initial, this is our initial batch of data. We got a response back. It says, okay, great, we need tweaking on these pieces. We need to fill in this bit. And so we're looking at, within the next couple of months, being able to get them some more finalized numbers, possibly another update, and get a final report out.
And so the final report is going to tell us what, Joe?
The final report is going to tell us whether or not we're meeting the minimum requirements of the ACA, and we believe that we are. But it's more importantly going to highlight any risks that we have associated with the ACA. So ACA talks about the Cadillac
Plan.
Cadillac fine?
The Cadillac tax, basically.
Cadillac tax. And so that plays a role in what the Benefits Committee will talk about when it comes up to renew the insurance programs that we currently have. Are we okay? Is there a modification that needs to be made? What modification do we need to make? If we're all good, let's just sign the contract and move forward.
I was going to ask you, for adjunct faculty, are they considered only for the hours they're on campus as working? Or, as part of the contract for full-time faculty, it says, your obligation is this many hours in the classroom, but we know that to teach that many hours, it requires this many hours of preparation.
And that's something that the report will tell us.
And actually, I think that the ACA offers comment on that, and so we're looking at getting guidance from Keenan on exactly how to interpret that and apply a reasonable and fair standard for that, but also the standard looking to other colleges, looking at other areas, what's going to be applied in that stance.
And to put that in context, particularly for Dr. Selvage, who might be new to this, we have roughly 400 full-time faculty, give or take, 380 something, I think the current number is. We have another 70 or so managers. We have roughly 350, give or take, issue CFT people. We have another 80 or so CSAA people. When you add it all up, we have a full-time complement of just under 1,000 people. Okay,
2,000.
just under full-time.
He hasn't said
Full-time.
adjunct yet.
Full-time, we're about
Okay.
just under 800, yeah.
Yeah, about 800 people.
He's
On
very
top of
good.
that, we have adjunct faculty that could, depending on the semester, could be 800 to 1,200 people. And then on top of that, that's what we have. So and then on top of that, we have college assistants, and we have student assistants. So at any one time, we could have upwards of 3,000 people on the payroll. At the moment, the 800 to 1,000 people have got benefits. Part of this study is going to tell us what is our obligation under the Affordability Care Act to the other people, to the adjunct faculty, to the college assistants, to the student workers, in terms of the number of hours they're working, what have you. Then we, as a college, need to make some decisions about what we're going to be able to do, what we're not going to do. And we've all heard and read the articles and seen on television. Some employers are basically saying, you know what, we're just going to give you a monthly stipend and you go do your own thing. And they've taken insurance away from people that had it, particularly the part-timers. Others are trying to figure out what is our additional obligation and liability now as a result of the new federal legislation. And so for the district, when this process is over, and it's probably a 2 or 3 year process by the time we finally finish it, there very well may be an additional requirement, a legal requirement for us to provide some level of benefits to employees other than the full-time people that we have now. That's sort of the bottom line to all this. And this study is to help us get a bench or baseline, if you will, of where we are at the time the study was done, and I think the data is based upon 12-13 or spring of 13. What was the data based on? 13-14, I should.
The 12-13, and well, we began with the 11-12 and then 13-14. One of the latest comments was they also wanted information up to current when we submit, and that won't be a problem.
Yeah.
So we're officially at 2 years, but we're actually going to realistically be a little bit over that.
Dave?
But it's gonna,
Is Ann Sherman here? Thank you.
but it really is gonna answer a lot of questions that we have about interpretation.
Right. So the bottom line to all this is that the benefits committee is engaged, is working. We've got some good outside people under the leadership of Maggie and Joe inside. We're working our way through this, and we're doing our
Under
thing.
Maggie's leadership.
Maggie's leadership, yeah.
Can I just quickly ask,
Sure.
the academic senate, they were supposed to have 3 reps on there, and I know they were having trouble getting a 3rd rep. Do they have a 3rd rep on there yet?
I can share, I don't remember, I can share the list with you guys.
Yeah, okay.
We actually postponed, we were supposed to meet in December and canceled the meeting because very few people,
We're able to
And
get
and
the
then
reps.
we had the January meeting last week.
we did, and I don't
I
remember.
think we just have to.
Okay.
Just two?
Okay,
I thought
so
it
I
was
think we're
just
still
one,
short
but
one.
yeah. No,
And then
it's
I didn't
two.
know if the
There's
FA had
me
got their rep on there
and
either.
Ali.
I know they had a position, but I don't know if we filled it. So anyway, if you could just get me the
Sure.
list, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through this other than to say that during the month I try to pull together what I think is good, interesting materials to share with you. And one of these, and I should have handed this out during the budget discussion, but I'll just do it right now. You know, there's a entity called the School Services of California, which is a nonprofit that's been around for 30, 40, 50 years. That is a great source of information to higher education and K-12 and higher education in the state. So they provide daily community college updates, and this particular one does a good job of explaining whether or not Prop 30 provides additional funds or not. And the answer is Prop 30 does not provide additional funds, and it explains that pretty well in here. What Prop 30 does is it removes the liability from the state of providing the funds that Prop 30 now provides. So Prop 30 now is an increase to the sales tax, and then it's an increase on in state income tax, I think, on people who make over $250,000 a year, or couples, or whatever it is. Part of that sunsets in 2016, and then the other, so 16 or 17, the other one is 17 or 18, I forget. But anyway, the bottom line, though, is that if you go down to those 4 bullets, well, the first paragraph, it basically says the money is used to basically supplant that which the state provided. That's what the first paragraph speaks to. And then the second paragraph speaks to what makes up the money that goes to California community colleges. And then you'll notice that what used to be enrollment fees, state aid, otherwise known as apportionment, and local property taxes, is now augmented by a 4th category called Education Protection Account Funds. So that EPA money is now a part of the money that goes to, in our case, community college districts, thereby relieving the state of providing that money out of the general fund. So it's not additional money, it's just money that is now added. Now what it does do, and thank God it did it, it provides stabilization. It avoids, we think, the deferral going forward. There's a baseline now of monies that the EPA provides that basically says, because of that property tax, because of that state income tax money and that sales tax money, that, I'm going to grab a number because I don't know what it is, that $500 million that the state may or may not have been able to give during the past several years, don't worry about it anymore. It's now going to be there because of the taxpayers of the state, because people voted for Prop 30. Now, it sunsets in 2016/17 or 17/18, and that's part of the discussion right now is, okay, well, when the EPA is gone, then what? But for now, we've got stabilization for at least the next, I guess now, 4 years, I guess. Yes.
So if I
Mary.
could just check
Sure.
my interpretation of this.
Sure.
You're saying that this is written from a school's perspective, and so from the perspective of people who budget for schools, they're not being provided with additional money, but the state is getting additional money.
The state is getting additional money,
state
thereby
budget has
relieving
additional
them of their responsibility to fund that piece. So
Right.
the ballot
So
measure
it is
said
additional money.
it is additional money, but the state is not giving us the additional money on top of what the state gave us. The state is now removing from their obligation to pay whatever the total Prop 30 money is and making it. So for example, if the pie is 100%, And the state had an obligation to pay 50% of that pie. And for the last 5 years, they were only able to pay 40%. That 10% is what resulted in our whole deferral mess that we've been having.
Right.
Now, with the EPA money, the state says, okay, I can guarantee you through property taxes, through state aid and student enrollment fees, and EPA, I can guarantee you our whole 50%. And the
And
law
your
now requires
deferrals.
that. And your deferral. So the deferrals goes away. No more deferrals because the EPA is going to take care of that. Unless we fall into another gigantic economic disaster, and then there's no. But at least this provides the stabilization, particularly to the K-12s. Everybody, K-12s and the community colleges, got massacred in the last several years, particularly the K-12s. This EPA basically says, okay, that you'll be okay for the next 4 or 5 years. But this, I thought, was a pretty good definition. It's not additional money, it's just stable money. You know what I'm saying? It's very hard to get your head wrapped around, but that's kind of what it is. Okay. Then another real quick, this is from the CCLC. This is a good discussion of what Prop 98 increases meant to the system and what have you. I think makes good reading from Scott Lay. There's a nice thing in here on the December 13 Economic Outlook, UCLA Economic Forecast of where we're going as a state. And then some of the things that I highlighted I thought were interesting things that kind of helped us understand where the state's going. Things are looking up. But again, Jerry Brown's interpretation, things are looking up is good. This is our opportunity to deal with our rainy day needs. And you've heard the expression wall of debt, and to pay down the wall of debt. So between John Chang, our controller, and the governor and others are trying to get that wall of debt paid down with a lot of the additional monies that are coming into the state right now. And then there's a little thing from LA Times about the big tax increase in December. Again, that's primarily due to capital gains, people having more money, making more money in the stock market. Oh, and then this was the last thing. This is the SSC Community College Financial Projection Dartboard. Thank you, Vanna. I appreciate that. You're doing a great job. And what's interesting about the dartboard is it basically projects COLAs, which is helpful, statutory COLA apportionments. They're projecting what they would look like going forward. So as we talked about 14, 15.86, then they're looking at 2.2, 2.4, 2.6, 2.7. That's what they're projecting. And the same thing with the lottery money and all the rest of it. And then there's a lot of other information here about what protected programs are and unprotected programs are. And it's just good. It's a dartboard. It's just a good basic piece of information about how we do our thing.
The last thing we have to cover is
It's the index.
Got it. Yes, thank you.
Bob, what is CPI, something?
Consumer Price Index.
Consumer Price Index.
Consumer Price Index. Right. And for us, by the way, the CPI is the LA Long Beach area. That's the one that we go by, Los Angeles Long Beach CPI. For our locally, I don't know if this CPI is probably based on the statewide, but for our district, whenever we have to use CPI, we benchmark to the LA. And that's because the cost to live here is higher than to live in Yuma City or someplace up north where the housing costs are cheaper or whatever. Okay, so the last thing is, unfortunately, the February 27th, I have another college obligation that I've got to do, so we need to reschedule the 27th. So we can send around a meeting notice on that, or unless you guys want to have an idea right now. Well, we'll send around a meeting notice on that. And in 3 minutes, we have the Center for the Arts opening. So, anything else for the good of the group? I'm sorry for all the words today, but I'm trying to give everybody a good sense of where we are. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.